A gunshot ripped through the quiet night, followed by the heartbreaking cries of two children. It wasn't a nightmare. It was a horrific reality that unfolded in one of California's most beautiful state parks. The death was cold, cruel, and inexplicable. A father, a husband, a brilliant scientist, murdered right next to his two young daughters.
It is a murder investigation, and right now deputies say they have no leads, no suspect, and no motive. We are told that Bodette was a brilliant scientist who worked for a pharmaceutical company, and tonight his heartbroken widow is trying to stay strong for their young children.
35-year-old Tristan Bodette had a resume most would envy. According to his LinkedIn page, he had a PhD in chemistry from UC Berkeley. But it was his two girls, his family tells us, that were his greatest pride. That's why his shooting death in a tent with his toddler daughters nearby is so devastating and so puzzling.
The campground was nearly full at summer vacation.
Even with other campsites close by at Malibu Creek State Park, deputies say someone shot Bodette just before 5 on Friday morning. Deputies say they found him bleeding and dying inside his tent. His 2- and 4-year-old daughters were with him, but unhurt. Bodette's family tells us his wife, also a PhD, was getting ready to take her board exams, so she stayed behind in Irvine. No one ever dreamed, even fellow campers, that violence would grip such a scenic and tranquil place.
Like pretty secluded, like everything's pretty spread out, like it's pretty quiet. Like I wouldn't expect like something to happen.
Now Bodette's family is grief-stricken. He and his wife were planning to move and looking forward to a new life, both as PhDs, and raising their 2 young daughters who shared Daddy's love for the outdoors.
And tonight, loved ones have set up the Tristan Bodette Memorial Fund on GoFundMe. They say they want to help raise money to help out his widow. If you'd like to donate, we put a link on our website, cbsla.com. Back to you.
Let's go back to the day it all began. Tristan Thomas Bodette, the victim in the murder just mentioned, was a 35-year-old man from Fresno, California, who lived a full and admirable life. Tristan wasn't just a talented research scientist in Orange County with a prestigious doctorate in chemistry from the University of California, Berkeley. He was also the valedictorian of his class in the Science Olympiad when he was a student. But more important than all of his achievements, Tristan was a devoted husband and a loving father to his 2 precious daughters, who were just 2 and 4 years old. He married his high school sweetheart, Erica, and they had been together since he was 18. Tristan was described as a person everyone loved, someone who enjoyed cooking, hiking, skiing, and especially loved the outdoors. To him, campgrounds were not just places to relax, but paradise, where people could feel safe and protected. His family was preparing for a promising new chapter, a move to San Francisco in just 1 week, as Erica was about to take a critical medical exam. To give his wife space to study, Tristan decided to do what he loved most, take his daughters camping. A simple, loving trip tragically turned into a fateful one. It was June 22, 2018 at 4:45 a.m. at Malibu Creek State Park. Lauren, a camper with her church group, said she went to bed at 11 p.m. and everything was super quiet. Then suddenly, a gunshot startled her awake. She waited, thinking maybe a child was playing with a toy gun. But then silence took over. I was fully awake and I tried to listen very carefully, but I couldn't hear anything. I thought, should I go outside and check? But something stopped me, and I'm really glad I didn't. Just 50 yards away, Scott was camping with his own kids, his brother-in-law Tristan and his nieces. He also heard a loud pop, like a firework, accompanied by a flash of light. Then he heard one of his nieces crying. He waited, thinking Tristan would console her, but nothing happened. Immediately, he jumped up and went to the tent to see what was going on. Tristan's 2-year-old just kept saying, "Wet, wet," as Scott tried to talk to them and figure out what had happened. He tried to wake Tristan. Then suddenly, he felt his hand get wet. When he turned on Tristan's phone, he saw it was blood. Tristan was lying dead next to his 2 young daughters who were kneeling in their father's blood. Scott tried to find a pulse, but it was no use. He quickly took the 2 girls out of the tent and called for other campers to help. One person came, giving Scott a chance to go back and check on Tristan. I noticed there was nothing in his eyes. I knew he was gone. He also noticed a small hole in the tent. Another camper, Stacy, also heard the unmistakable gunshot and then the sound of children crying, followed by a man calling for help. Describing the child's cries, she said it was a very desperate cry, saying "Daddy" over and over again. When she called 911, she whispered what was happening, not wanting the shooter to know the location of her tent. Stephen, the pastor of the church Lauren was camping with, was also there that night. His sleep was undisturbed, but the next morning he was woken up by a deputy sheriff. He asked a lot of questions. The main question was, is everyone in the tents safe? He asked if anyone was missing from our area or from our tents. It was so early I thought maybe someone had been a bad neighbor to the community and they were trying to figure out what happened. I didn't think anyone had been murdered. The campground was almost full for the summer. Although the other campsites at Malibu Creek State Park were quite isolated and quiet, according to police, someone shot Baudet just before 5 a.m. on a Friday. He was a family man, and he had everything set up to take care of his family and be with them. That night, the iconic campground was closed. With no suspects, this mysterious murder was at a complete standstill. Many people were shocked. Tristan was an influential person, so much so that his old science teacher paid tribute to him, saying he was one of the students who truly stood out in her 35-year teaching career. A fundraiser raised over $100,000 for his family. When the news of what happened was released, Erica's life was shattered in a moment. Initially, police treated this as an isolated case, but as the crime scene was secured and interviews with other campers were conducted, a terrifying truth slowly emerged. This was not a one-off incident. It turned out that park users had been terrorized by someone who had been shooting at cars and campers. The scale of it was staggering. We know of at least 5 other shootings that had occurred around the park in the past 2 years. 8 people had reported being shot at, with the first incident taking place in November 2016. James, a man who was sleeping in his hammock in the park, was suddenly woken by a sharp pain in his arm and a loud noise. At first, he thought he might have been bitten by something, but then he realized he had actually been shot. He looked around and saw no one. Afterward, he had to have surgery to remove the bullet fragments lodged in his arm. The following week, a gun was fired at the sleeping area of a vehicle. There were also 3 instances in 2017 where vehicles were shot at, but no one was injured. In one of those cases, a woman was camping in her car with her boyfriend when she heard a loud noise and found a shotgun shell in the back of her car. She said if the bullet had been 1 inch higher, she would have been hit. They immediately reported the incident to the police. The first thing the police officer said to me when he arrived was, "This doesn't happen here," but it clearly did. T.C. Woods, the editor of the local Malibu newspaper, had been covering the various shootings at Malibu Creek State Park. She noticed a pattern. For more than a year now, there have been incidents. Whether they are related or not doesn't matter to me. This kind of thing doesn't usually happen here, but it's happening here and now. And 4 days before Tristan's murder, another man had been shot at in his car. These attacks had been reported to park rangers, but no warnings were issued, and the public was left unaware of the risks or the threat. There was also a series of thefts in Calabasas, including a person who broke into vending machines and stole food. Footage showed a man carrying what appeared to be a rifle and wearing all black. People are naturally on edge, wondering when the shooter will strike next. "I have never had so much as a bicycle stolen," said one resident. "I would not go for a walk out there now, would you?" Sheriff's deputies also increased their patrols in the area to try and reassure the public. Days turned into weeks, and then into months, and all the questions about Tristan's murder remained unanswered. A $30,000 reward was offered for information that led to the arrest and conviction of his killer. For his family, especially his 2 young daughters, the pain and confusion were unimaginable. The family did their best to help the girls through what they had experienced. Tristan's stepfather said the girls understand that Daddy didn't wake up and there was a lot of blood when they woke up to a lot of noise. He added, "I hope they will continue to camp outdoors. I don't want a tragedy like this to prevent them from continuing to grow." Tracing through the park and surrounding areas, investigators followed a series of clues from one of the thefts that had occurred. A police dog followed a scent, and a series of shoe tracks led them back to a campsite. There, on October 10th, they arrested a man, Anthony Rauda. Anthony Rauda was homeless and had been living in the campsite in the park, in the hills behind the police station. He was a parolee who was illegally in possession of a firearm. His sister said he had a history of mental health issues and had come to live in the area because he couldn't get along with other people. He often used the park's facilities for Wi-Fi and to charge his phone. He had previously been in jail for possessing explosives and later for possessing a loaded firearm, which was a felony for an ex-convict. His weapons charges dated back to 2006, and he also had convictions for assault. In December 2018, Anthony was sentenced to 6 months in jail for firearms and ammunition violations, concurrent with a 160-day sentence for violating his parole. Then the breakthrough investigators had been hoping for months finally came. ballistic tests on the bullets that killed Tristan and also the one that hit the man's car 4 days before Tristan's murder matched the rifle found in Anthony's backpack. In January 2019, Anthony Rauda was charged with the murder of Tristan Baudet, 10 counts of attempted murder, 2 of which were Tristan's children, and 5 counts of armed robbery. He pleaded not guilty and was held on $1.1 million bail. In May of that year, nearly a year after the murder, the park was reopened. However, not everyone believed that Malibu Creek State Park was safe to return to despite the arrest. I freaked out and got on the phone with my friends in law enforcement and I said, "This is a huge mistake." C.C. Woods, a residential supervisor, noted that over the past few months there had been reports of gunshots. Not many, but enough to be concerned that the activity was escalating again. But a California park spokesperson said that since the previous year's murder, they had not received any reports of gunshots. They consulted with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and determined there was no ongoing public safety risk. Pre-trial proceedings stretched on for years, and Anthony Rauda's disrespectful and abusive behavior was shocking and severely disruptive. In one hearing, he said he wanted to represent himself and didn't want a lawyer, but the judge would not allow or even consider the idea. As a result, Anthony attacked a deputy and had to be forcibly restrained while also threatening the judge. At other times, he had to be strapped to a chair and wear a spit mask to contain his violent outbursts. He was also convicted of 2 counts of assaulting a peace officer. One of these attacks was against a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy, who was punched in the jaw, and the other was against another deputy, who was attacked with a pencil. Anthony Rauda waived his right to be present in the courtroom for his trial, which was soon to begin. His lawyer argued there was reasonable doubt surrounding the charges, adding that the jury should look for the gaps in the evidence that pointed to larger holes in the case. One of these was that DNA tests on cigarette butts found near the crime scene belonged to an unidentified man. There is obviously reasonable doubt. Follow the law and find Anthony Rauda not guilty, the lawyer said. But the prosecutor called the cigarette butts a red herring. They were found at a public campsite and had nothing to do with Tristan's murder. The prosecutor told the jury that Anthony had a pattern of stalking and preying on campers. They also said they would prove his phone had been in the park on the days these crimes were committed. The defense countered that his phone connected to Wi-Fi most days, which wasn't the same as being present on those specific dates. The pattern of escalating violence was made clear. Most of the early attacks involved the use of what prosecutors described as a homemade shotgun full of birdshot that did not cause life-threatening injuries. Later, Anthony upgraded to a sawed-off rifle. He was actively trying to do something that you know is going to be deadly when he was researching how to blow up a car by shooting at the gas tank. And then you see him shooting at a BMW, the Los Angeles Deputy District Attorney said in his closing argument. When it came to Tristan's murder, the prosecution pushed for a first-degree murder conviction. But the jury was not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Anthony had acted with premeditation. He was then convicted of second-degree murder. To secure a first-degree murder conviction, intent must be proven, while second-degree has no such requirement. Anthony Rauda was also convicted of 3 counts of attempted murder, Tristan's 2 children and the man whose car was shot 4 days before the murder. He was also convicted of 5 counts of robbery. He was found not guilty of the other shootings, which were done with a different weapon that was never found. He's a smart guy, and that's a dangerous combination. Cold and smart. He proved that he's smart enough to waive his right to be present for a trial. That says a lot because he knows how he's acted before. He knows why he's in that chair. He knows why he has a mesh on his head. He's threatened people in court before. Everybody. He used violent profanities constantly. He stabbed a deputy. He punched a deputy. He's had multiple incidents in jail. One of the most recent incidents was less than 30 days ago from this trial. He had to be put in a chair he was tied to because he was so dangerous. He had to wear a mesh over his head because he was constantly spitting at people. So this case wasn't just a cold case. He's continued to act violently. He's continued to be aggressive, and that's who he is. But again, he's smart, and that's a dangerous combination. And our jury was amazing. Our jury, they were careful, they were meticulous. They even found a couple of errors that none of us found. And they looked at this evidence very objectively, just like I asked them to do. And again, the verdicts show that, and I have to commend my jury on how they approached the case. Tristan's widow, Erica, was in court with her family and Tristan's brother-in-law, Scott. "We lost our entire planned future," she said. "The family we were and the family we were going to become." She said she wonders if, in the chaos of the murder, Tristan had a final thought or prayer. And if he did, he must have sent a message to the universe to please keep his daughters safe. She asked the judge to sentence Anthony Rauda to the maximum. The judge said, "I can say without hesitation that Mr. Rauda is not only a danger to the community, but an extreme danger to the community. This case is chilling. It's violent, it's cold, there's zero remorse. It's like someone's worst nightmare. I've been an attorney, a judge for a long time. I've seen a lot of dangerous people, from gang members to domestic terrorists. I've seen them all. And I can say that Mr. Rauda, you rank in the top for how dangerous you are to the community." She then sentenced him to 119 years to life in prison. Erica later filed a $90 million lawsuit against various agencies, claiming they didn't do enough to warn the public about an unsolved series of shootings. The agencies confirmed they knew of at least 7 unsolved shootings at Malibu Creek State Park, the lawsuit stated. The agencies negligently failed to care for and provide a safe space for Beaudet and his children, instead causing his death. The suit alleged that the agencies, not wanting to bring negative attention to the park, failed to notify people about what was happening. If Tristan Beaudet had known about the prior shootings, he would have never taken himself or his young daughters camping, thereby putting his daughters and himself at grave risk. However, lawyers for the county and state argued that neither the sheriff's department nor the state park agency was legally required to notify the public. The judge said the sheriff's department couldn't be held responsible because Tristan had never contacted them to ask if camping in the park was dangerous or posed a potential risk. In 2021, the judge told Erica she would need more evidence for her lawsuit and gave her 30 days to refile an amended complaint. Another lawsuit was also filed by Sheriff's Lieutenant James Royal, a 24-year veteran of the department. He alleged that he tried to ensure the public was notified about the shootings, and as a result, his superiors retaliated against him, saying it was a matter for the state park to handle, not them. The lawsuit claimed he attempted to issue a public safety statement, but this was denied. It also stated that after Tristan's murder, his superiors ordered him to say at a town hall meeting that it was the official sheriff's department position that the other shootings were unrelated to Tristan's death, telling him, "Investigators are looking at a series of shootings which at this point are not related." The lawsuit alleged that after speaking out, he was transferred, stripped of his detective status, and internally investigated under false circumstances that damaged his reputation. His lawsuit was later dismissed. Although Anthony Rauda will never be free from prison, it cannot undo the damage he has caused. For Tristan's family, life was forever changed that night. In just a few days, he and his beloved wife and children were set to move and begin a new chapter. It's profoundly unfair that that future never came to be. His legacy lives on in many ways. His former classmates established a scholarship fund in his honor, and his memory also lives on in the lives of his children. Erica said there's a void she feels every day, and holding her family together after something like this is a burden no one should have to bear. Making every decision, giving every hug, drying every tear, knowing that I am all they have while also knowing that I am not enough, because he should have been here, and he would have been if not for what happened that night. I may never understand why our time together was cut short, but we had an incredible journey, and I am grateful for every single day I had him. This story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, the resilience of the human spirit and the pursuit of justice can bring a glimmer of hope. It also serves as a stark reminder that safety isn't always guaranteed, even in places we see as sanctuaries. Always be aware and always be vigilant.